Okay, it looks like we have most of the folks already in. So welcome everybody this evening. We're very glad to have you joining us tonight. Wanted to go through a few moments of talking about the guidelines for tonight's meeting. And you have probably already noticed that your microphones are muted and your cameras are off. So you are able to see us and hear us, but we will unmute you if you'd like to ask a question once we get to the Q&A session. At the Q&A session, that will take place after a 20-minute presentation, and then we'll open up the floor to questions and comments. And if you're joining us online, if you look at the bottom of your screen, or if you're joining us on Zoom, at the bottom of your screen, you will see some icon menus. And if you would like to speak with us, raise your hand, and that way we will know that you have a question or comment. And when we get to that point, we will unmute the microphone so you'll be able to talk with us. If you would prefer not to talk, you can also use the Q&A function and just click on that and you can enter in your question and we will get to your questions as we move through the session. If you're on Facebook Live, you're on watch only mode at the moment, but we will try to answer questions as much as we can if any are submitted through that channel. If you are joining us by phone, you can also ask questions. The phone number to join us this evening is right here, 301-715-8592, and enter in the meeting ID. And there will be a voice on there that will prompt you through the system. But if you would like to raise your hand so we know you have a question, you click *9. And once we get to you to answer your question or allow you to speak, you will receive a voice that asks you to unmute your phone. And at that point, you hit *6. We'll go over this information again once we get to the Q&A session. But with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn the floor over to our host, Benjamin Helms.
Hello, I'm Ben. I'm a landscape architect here at Great Parks. I'm also the project manager for the Glenwood Gardens to Winton Woods Shared Use Trail project. I'd really like to thank everyone for joining us and taking time out of your evening to hear about this project. We're excited to bring it to the public at this point. We think we have a pretty good proposed trail project to show you all. But before we get too far into the details, we want to hear what you have to say about it and point out show us some things that we haven't thought of. So I'm joined here tonight by Becky Osinski, our regional planning coordinator here at Great Parks, and Eric Anderson, project manager from KZF Design, who's leading our design consultant team, Laura Whitman from Razor Marketing, and Haley Taylor from Razor Marketing. And just to give you a little bit of background, I'm going to share some history and some context to kind of give you some background as to help you understand some of the details of our thinking in relationship to this project. Great Parks Comprehensive Master Plan guides all of our decision making here, and it was completed in January 29th, 2019, and sets a vision for parks, facilities, programming, and services through 2028. The Comprehensive Master Plan was formed through an extensive community planning project with lots of public outreach, and based on what we heard, we developed 8 priorities, which include building more trails, adding programs and events for diverse audiences, providing access to some of our conservation areas, establishing a defined blueway system along our local waterways, focusing on partnerships, building ecological resiliency and sustainability, and expanding access for all users. And we've tried to incorporate as many of these priorities into this project as possible. Some of the specific public feedback that we've received and we continue to receive through our park and facility master planning process, which is ongoing, is to prioritize trails, expand the regional trail system and its connections. And these trail expansions and connections should focus on trails within parks, but also fill in missing connections across the county and increase trail and park access to underserved areas and adjacent neighborhoods. And if COVID has taught us anything, it is that these trails are especially important at this time. Our trail use in 2020 was up 77% over 2019. And even in the first couple of months of this year in 2021, we're seeing increased trail use over last year. So this is a really high priority for our county residents and park users. I also like to point out just some general benefits of these types of shared use trails. Obviously, they provide free recreation and transportation opportunities. And in doing so, are environmentally friendly by providing an alternative to vehicle-based travel that's emission and cost-free, and contribute to preservation of open space. And while you're using these type of trails, you're improving health benefits and by being encouraged to be outdoors and exercise. These types of trails can also increase property values. Proximity to shared use trails is attractive to home buyers and businesses and is among top requested amenities for home buyers, according to the National Association of Realtors. Property value impacts to single properties may be relatively small, but impacts across areas make a bigger impact. These types of trails also have an effect on increasing jobs and local business revenues, because they can bring in users and also provide opportunities for people to reach jobs and services that they might not have been able to reach. So with that in mind, we have set a series of goals for ourselves as we've been planning this project. And this is guided again by the comprehensive master plan priorities, the priorities that we've heard from the public, and based on the general benefits of shared use trails. So the goals that we have set are to enhance connectivity through safe and accessible alternative transportation options, improve pedestrian safety, provide non-vehicular access to green space and local businesses, improve air quality, improve community health and wellness, and provide a high quality outdoor recreation experience. Along the way, we hope to provide learning moments for nature observation as well as conservation and sustainability education, protect and enhance our natural resources in the development and construction of the project, identify opportunities to utilize low impact construction techniques and options, and incorporate strategic use of green infrastructure practices to build ecological resiliency. This trail project has been envisioned for many years. Generally speaking, a local shared use trail network in the Mill Creek watershed has been talked about for at least 20 years, probably longer. And specifically in relation to our project, Great Parks has desired to create a connection between Winton Woods and Glenwood Gardens since Glenwood Gardens was acquired in the 1990s. And in fact, Glenwood Gardens and Winton Woods actually do touch one another, but they're separated by the West Fork Mill Creek Dam. And so it's very difficult to make a physical trail connection between the two parks. And so over the years, many alternatives have been looked at to finally connect these parks. So what we're going to sort of talk about tonight is the development of our proposed trail and sort of where we're at with that, and hopefully get some feedback from everyone who's in attendance. So in 2016, A feasibility study was undertaken and completed in 2017. The feasibility study looked at multiple different route options to make this connection between the two parks. Out of that feasibility study, a preliminary preferred alignment was identified. And the preliminary preferred alignment at that time, was the recommended route that best satisfied the goals of the project at the time. Since then, we've looked at this preliminary preferred alignment and have asked ourselves, can it be better? How can we make this a better trail project? And we identified some areas that we felt like we could improve on. And some of those areas include expanding connections. Our proposed route builds on the preliminary alternative alignment by adding additional connections to public transportation. We realized that was, a missing piece from the feasibility study. Additionally, the proposed alignment that we're going to share with you tonight is planned to be an accessible grade along the entire length. The proposed alignment makes the connection between the two parks, and along the way, it connects multiple communities. In building off of the West Fork Mill Creek Greenway Trail, our proposed alignment actually connects Wyoming and Woodlawn to the east, to Glendale to the north, over to Springfield Township, Green Hills, and Forest Park to the west. And it's important to point out that our proposed alignment is located entirely on public land or easements. So this gives you a general overview of our proposed alignment, and I'd like to just take a minute to walk you through the different areas that are a part of it. We'll move from east on the right side of the map to west on the left side of the map. On the right, you can see the existing West Fork Mill Creek Greenway Trail in green. This trail actually extends off the map further south through Woodlawn and down to Oak Park in Wyoming. That existing trail is 2.3 miles, and there are plans to actually extend it further south to the business district along Wyoming Avenue and eventually to the Mill Creek itself. You'll notice a short light blue line extending from the green West Fork Mill Creek Greenway Trail. We recognize that the entrance to Glenwood Gardens that's shared with the Glenwood Crossing Shopping Center is not pedestrian friendly. And so we have planned improvements to provide a sidewalk connecting the nearby bus stop on Springfield Pike to the West Fork Mill Creek Greenway Trail, as well as a crosswalk across the shared entrance to connect to the existing crosswalk on the north side of the Springfield Pike Glendale Milford Road intersection. Pedestrians will finally be able to cross these busy roads safely and make connections to the Metro Bus Route 78, and also safely walk into Glenwood Gardens Park and the Glenwood Crossing Shopping Center. Great Parks has been approved federal funding for this specific improvement project, and construction is anticipated in late 2023. At the north end of the existing West Fork Mill Creek Greenway Trail, which is the blue circle at the top end of the green line, you can see a segment of the proposed trail in dark blue that will extend north, then turn east or to the right and reconnect with Springfield Pike. This trail segment makes another connection to a bus stop and builds in more connections between residences, businesses, shopping, and public transportation. Next, we'll take a look at the Glenwood Gardens segment of the proposed trail, which is the dark blue line located above the Glenwood Gardens label. This segment of the trail partially follows the existing service drive through this northern area of the park. Converting the service drive to trail takes advantage of this existing infrastructure while helping balance the impacts of development on the rich natural areas found in the park, including forests, prairies, and the West Fork Mill Creek stream corridor. It's important to point out that the new trail will be separated from the existing Glenwood Gardens trails, including the garden and wetland loops, and there are no plans to open those trails to bicycles and other recreational wheeled vehicles. After passing through the rich natural areas of Glenwood Gardens, the trail will circle around the Great Parks Technical Center before crossing Sheffield Road. The trail then enters the Glenview Golf Course property. Great Parks has been working with the Cincinnati Recreation Commission and the City of Cincinnati to develop this portion of the trail through this city-owned property. The trail climbs through a wooded stream valley to a more open level stretch along the north side of Sheffield. The trail is planned to travel through an undeveloped portion of the Glenview property and will not impact the golf course itself. As the trail leaves the golf course, it then crosses the road to a Great Parks owned property along Toulon Drive, where it's able to pass into Winton Woods, creating a new gateway to the park in the Hollydale neighborhood. The trail enters Winton Woods in this area that was a site of an extensive restoration effort following lake dredging of Winton Lake carried out in the 1990s. This site, which was completely cleared and stripped during the dredging operation, has become a mixture of wetlands, vernal pools, and prairie habitat that are home to many plants and animals. After crossing McKelvey Road, the trail follows the north edge of the siltation basin, another remnant of the last lake dredging operation that has become prime wetland bird habitat and provides opportunities to view interesting migratory bird species. Leaving the siltation basin, the trail travels through a forested area to connect to Lakeview Drive. At Lakeview Drive, a shorter trail segment runs north, creating another community connection into the Forest Park Section C neighborhood at Carlsbad Road. The main trail follows alongside of Lakeview south to connect to the Winton Woods Shared Use Trail network at the campground. Trail users can continue on to the harbor and beyond with options to circle the lake on the harbor loop, travel further into the park on the West Branch Trail, or catch a bus at the bus stops on Winton Road served by the 20, 23, and 14X routes. So to recap, our proposed project expands the regional trail system, provides direct connection to the West Fork Mill Creek Greenway Trail, the Winton Woods Harbor Loop Trail, and multiple trails in between. This proposed trail project is 3.6 miles of new trail, and if you were to travel from the existing south terminus of the West Fork Mill Creek Greenway in Wyoming and go all the way to Winton Woods up to the Kingfisher area, you would have traveled over 9 miles. And at a larger scale, this trail project is part of the larger regional trail system, including the planned Mill Creek Triangle Trail, which includes the trail corridor along the Mill Creek itself, the West Fork Mill Creek Greenway, which our trail is a part of, and the Winton Woods to Sharon Woods trail corridor. The Triangle Trail and Mill Creek Trail system will eventually connect into the Crown system, and the Crown system connects into the Ohio River Trail and the Little Miami Scenic Trail. All in all, our project is intended to be a paved 12-foot wide asphalt trail, ADA accessible along its whole length, supporting most forms of non-motorized travel, and providing new access points to parks, with these additional access improvements specifically at the Glenwood Gardens entrance. Our project has a variety of route lengths and a variety of experiences, taking you through formal gardens, prairies, forests, woods, wetlands, and to the lake in Winton Woods. And on either end, our project takes you to neighborhoods, businesses, services, and transportation options. Currently, our project development schedule looks like this. The feasibility study was complete. We've identified a proposed recommended route, and we're at the point where we want to share that. We've shared that concept with you all, and now we want to hear what you have to say and answer questions you might have, and use the input and use your questions to inform our decision making as we move forward into more detailed design. We intend to, based on your input and our continued design work, we hope to reveal a more or less final route in the fall and winter later this year, and we'll be working through completing design work to be completed towards the end of the year. Beyond that, we'll be working to obtain permits and approvals, which you can imagine on a 3.6 mile trail crossing through so many different communities. There are a lot of various permits and approvals to gain, and we will also be working on funding. We'll be looking for at various outside sources, including federal and state funding. And we project at this time that the earliest that we might construct the main trail project would be in the year 2025. There's lots of ways to share feedback. We're going to get to some of your questions tonight. It looks like we have some raised hands and some questions to get to, and we're glad to see that. But we also have an online comment form on our project website, which is greatparks.org/GG2WW. We would prefer that you provide your comments and answer some of the questions that are a part of that comment form that way. But you can also email. We have a project email address set up if you prefer to communicate that way. You can also mail a comment or a printed comment form. We have printable comment forms available on our project website. Those can be printed and filled out and mailed to me. And I'm also reachable by phone, by the phone number listed here. It's also listed on our website if you need to be reminded. And we do ask that your comment, we would like to have your comments back by May 1st, so we can sort of process through everything, and as I said, use your feedback to inform our design process and continue our work on design development.
Okay, great. I'm sorry, did that go through?
Yes.
Okay, trying again. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, my apologies. I just wanted to review the meeting guidelines again. Ben, I'm sorry, is the voice bad on that? It sounds bad on my end.
You're okay now.
Okay, I apologize, everybody. A little bit of feedback coming through on my end there. Just to recap, thank you very much for the presentation, Ben. And now I'd like to move into the Q&A portion of the meeting. And as we said at the beginning, if you're joining us online, there are a couple ways to ask your questions. Raise your hands, and I've seen a number of hands already coming up, and we will answer those, try to do our best in the order that they are received. or you can enter your questions into the Q&A function also at the bottom of your screen. And if you're on telephone, to raise your hand, just hit *9. And once you are prompted, go ahead and hit *6 to unmute your phone. And at that, we will go ahead and begin the Q&As. And the first question we have from the written Q&A is from Larry B. And he was asking what traffic signals will be located at the Trail Street intersections?
That's a great question, Larry B. And that is one of the design details that we will have to obviously work out. One thing we've talked about along Sheffield is the potential to use what's called a rectangular rapid flashing beacon, which is a special type of crosswalk that is activated by the user and has a flashing bright flashing sign to signal that there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk. The Southland Road Toulon Sheffield intersection, if you've ever been there, is a little bit of a tricky intersection. We do have a traffic engineer on our design team that will be helping us examine exactly how we're going to make that road crossing. So, in other words, those design decisions are still in the works. So we're still working through those.
Okay, great, thank you. We have a call from JK, and JK, I'm pushing the button to allow you to speak, so you should be able to ask your question now.
Hi, I was just curious because the two parts being combined, they are, in my mind, they're different use. In Glenwood Gardens, I know people sneak in the bikes, but otherwise it's supposed to be just for pedestrians. And then, of course, the Winton Wood is hike and bike because, so I'm not clear how the new trail will be, whether it will be following Glenwood Gardens trail standards or the Winton Woods.
That's a great question. I would say it will be more similar to the shared use trails that you see at Winton Woods. But I will point out that the proposed trail, the new trail, will be separated from the existing Glenwood Gardens trails. We recognize that there's a certain experiential quality that is provided by and expected of the wetland and garden loops at Glenwood Gardens, and we don't want to alter that experience. And so they will be two separate trail systems.
Okay, no, that's good to know. And also the other thing is, in addition to that experience, safety is the other one. Because right now, Glenwood Gardens trails are very, very user-friendly for elderly people. My mom being one of them. Because there are no bikes. Normally, I know that there are some people who sneak in, but they are not allowed. They do sneak in, but that's a different story. So it's a little bit easier for elderly people that they can walk. They are not worried someone is going to mow them down or something like that. That's why I wanted to know.
Yes. Yeah. We do intend to keep those separated because we do recognize that it's important to offer, like you're saying, a variety of experiences and a variety of trail conditions. So we don't want to upset that existing experience.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Great, thank you. We have a question that came through on Facebook from a resident on Toulon, and he says, from the map, it looks like the path is going to pass through the back of his yard, and wants to know if the soil has been checked in the wetlands behind Toulon where the trail is going to be.
So there, as you point out, there are a series of wetlands and vernal pools in the area in Winton Woods to the west or behind Toulon, as you mentioned. That is a design challenge, both for constructability, being that the ground is very wet, but also because that is a high quality habitat for various plants and animals. One of the reasons that the trail there stays so tightly to the border of the park is to kind of navigate that wet area there. So that is something that we've considered. As I said, we still have a lot of design work to do, but we are trying to avoid impacting wetlands. I'm not sure if that's answering your question. So if you have any follow up, let us know.
Chris Carr has entered in a couple comments on the Q&A, and the first one is, love your plan to loop the trail behind the tech center and close to the West Fork Creek. And then followed on with a question asking, with the master plan focus on Blue Way, are there plans to tie this trail into West Fork Creek?
That's a great question, Chris. Our project does not include any kind of amenities directly on the West Fork Creek. Although that is something that we have been talking about as we're working through park and facility master plans. Recognizing that is part of the local Blue Way network. But this project specifically does not have any improvements directly on the creek there.
Okay, great. Rosemary is a call-in, and Rosemary, go ahead and ask your question. Are you with us?
So I am with you. We noticed when the trail was constructed around the Winton Reservoir that a lot of trees were cut down, and we're wondering how you plan to ensure, as your earlier materials indicated, that you do use sustainable methodology and try to preserve the environment.
Very good question, because as you know, we're a conservation-based agency, and conservation and protection of natural resources is a central part of the mission of Great Parks, and very important to us. I will say that so far in this development of the trail, I've been working closely with our natural resources staff. They have provided invaluable input as we've walked through the proposed route. As I said, we are still working through design details. We recently completed a preliminary survey. That survey shows us, where our prime trees are. So we will be working to not only directly avoid those, but also avoid, potentially the compacting or filling over the critical root zones of those trees. Now, we will have to cut some trees. I'll just be honest. There will be some instances, but that being said, we do not intend to cut prime mature specimen trees. So I hope that answers your question, but let me know if I can follow up.
And I apologize to Rosemary. I accidentally turned her phone line off. So if you have a follow-up question, please raise your hand again. We'll get back with you. Wade Johnson asked what the comment form web address is. And that web address is www.greatparks.org/G, capital G, capital G, 2, capital W, capital W. So greatparks.org/GG2, the number 2, WW. Jim Gagnon has a question. How long will the trail along Lakeview Drive be protected? Or excuse me, how will the trail along Lakeview Drive be protected from vehicle traffic?
Very good question, and I hate to keep deferring to this, but it's a design detail that we haven't specifically settled on. That's a tight corridor, so your question is astute, because the trail will run fairly close to the road. Ideally, we would like to separate it as much as possible, and really make it not only physically safe, but also feel safe, and provide a better experience while you're using it. But as far as a specific, we're not quite there yet, so you'll have to sort of keep posted on how we develop that.
Great, thank you. We have Philip Smith on the phone. Philip, you should be able to see us.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I have two questions, and I posted them on the chat line. The first one is, can the project be accelerated at all? 2025 seems a long time away.
I would agree with you, and unfortunately, one of our major sources of funding is federal and federal, specifically federal transportation funding, and the timelines on those funding streams are extremely long, and so that's really what sort of one of the limiting factors, is sort of how we're gonna fund the project. So unfortunately, I think that 2025 estimate is probably close to as best we might be able to do.
Okay. And my second question, I noticed the trail will be open to non-motorized vehicles. So are electric bikes classified as being motorized?
That is a good question. I'm honestly not sure how our
Ben,
yes, Becky.
we allow class 1 and 2 bikes on our trails that allow bikes on them.
Okay.
So our shared use trails do allow class A and B, sorry, the 2 bottom levels.
Okay. And that's up to what, 250 watts output, something like that?
I'm not sure.
Right. Low power bicycles is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. That answers my two questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Philip. We have a question in the Q&A from Jay Coomer. It says, although it's obviously counter to the goal of achieving greater non-vehicular traffic, how many will have to motor to the trails, or many will have to motor to the trails? Will there be parking opportunities at various access points?
We don't plan to build additional parking for the project, but we do have ample parking at both Glenwood Gardens and Winton Woods that are directly connected to the trail. And another reason we emphasized connections to the Metro bus stops at various points along the way, to really encourage getting out of the car and using those alternative modes of transportation.
Okay, great. We do have a follow-up question from Facebook, and it is the resident on Toulon. And he says, as he stated, Toulon, Southland, and Sheffield is a tricky intersection, and there have been multiple accidents at that intersection. It's not safe for cars. How can it be safe for pedestrians?
You're absolutely right, and we recognize that is a challenging intersection. And so, as I said, we we do have a traffic engineer on our design team that will be helping us work through that. We'll likely need to additionally work with Forest Park, Forest Park and Woodlawn, I believe, are the jurisdictions there, and to come up with some safe alternatives to the current configuration of that intersection.
Thank you, Ben. Monica Yehad, and I apologize if I didn't pronounce that correct. You are on the phone line and are able to speak. Monica?
Unmute, you can hear me, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So looks like one of my questions got answered already, but one of my important things that we are concerned about on Toulon Drive, I live on the side where the trail would be in back of my house. And we are having water and drainage issues already, along with the grading from the houses that we built here. So we just are, I know I am wondering about the construction, if that would disturb our properties, and the combined sewer and stormwater problems that we already have. How will that affect our properties? It's important.
Hi, Monica. I as I mentioned to you earlier, I know we've spoken before. I really would like to take a look at some of these concerns that you have actually like on site. We were not aware that there were drainage issues along that property line there. So this is something that we're very interested to take a look at with you. And this is exactly the kind of thing that we really wanted to hear at this public meeting tonight is things that we may not have been aware of. So I think this is an instance where we need to get together and take a look at that. So and I know you have my number, and maybe we if there are other Toulon residents, if we want to try to organize a little meetup and take a look at things.
That would be great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Meetup, as we just need to talk it through a little bit to see where that goes for us.
Sure.
Will be, how we'll be affecting especially if they're putting a trail back here. You don't want the money that you're going to put into this after this, all this great funding you get, for it not to last very long because of all the water.
Yeah, good point. So I will follow up with you, Monica, and we'll make some arrangements.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Monica. Fred Conrad is asking if the gravel drive from Glenwood Gardens parking lot to Sheffield be open to bikes and pedestrians now. He says that Springfield Pike to Sheffield is very dangerous.
We don't currently have plans to open that. We still do use that for the operational traffic for the park maintenance. That I suppose that is something that we could consider. We don't actively invite people to use the service drive, but at the same time, we don't explicitly prohibit it. It's just be aware that it is a maintenance service drive, so there's maintenance traffic on it.
Okay, thank you, Ben. We have a caller. The last four name numbers are 5605, and you should be prompted to ask your question. Are you there at 5605?
Is that me?
I'm sorry, say that again.
I was wondering whether you were talking to me. I didn't recognize the 5605.
That's what it's showing up on our screen, but you've got the floor.
Okay, great, thanks. First remark, I hate that we're looking at 2025. Because I'd be happy to see them just blaze a in the short run and let us start using it as a roughed in path. But the real question I have at the moment is where you arrive at the corner of Lakeview Drive and Sharon Road. There's an abandoned road going north from there, across on the north side of Sharon Road, that runs over towards underneath Winton Road and towards Spoil Field, and I think ultimately would take you all the way to the Possum Run youth camp. And I was wondering if you thinking about tying that already semi-paved section into this. I want to at least plant the idea.
Yeah, I think we would love to get that there someday. Because that, you know, as you said, that would that old gravel drive would really create a great connection over to the western part of the park. So I think someday, you know, that we would love to develop that existing corridor there. And as you said, it's nice because it travels underneath Winton Road, so you don't have to actually cross that busy road. So hopefully one of these days we'll be able to develop that. That'll be next.
Okay. Great Parks of Hamilton County already contributes to the Great Miami Trail Association, Great Miami River Trail Association. Is there long-term plans to connect out to that somehow?
There are, but they're very conceptual.
I'm getting no. We need to do this now.
Yeah, that is a very ambitious connection to make, and again, I think, you know, we would be in complete support of that idea. It's just a matter of, you know, making something like that happen. That would be a huge project.
Well, their website shows that the Great Parks is contributing to the Great Miami River Trail. So, how are we benefiting it in the short run?
I'm not sure how to answer your question.
That's okay.
Becky may be.
It's a rhetorical question. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say, this is Becky Ozinski. We are a new member of the Great Miami Riverway Coalition, and we are trying to build into, as we do our park and facility master plans, especially for those like West Side parks, how could we help work with the other communities to bring the Great Miami River Trail as well as the Blue Way down into Hamilton County more. So right now it kind of ends at the county border. So how can we help bring that all the way down to Miami Whitewater Forest and Shawnee Lookout and down to the Ohio River Trail? But as Ben was saying, that's still a long ways off, but it is definitely on our radar.
Is there a website or that I can get onto to see where that actually shows you all the trails we're potentially looking at?
Not yet, but we're hoping to have something like that out in next month in May for the public to review.
I'll turn the floor back over to you guys.
Thank you.
Okay, great. We have a question from on our Q&A. The person says that they're thankful we are considering public transportation access needs near the Glenwood Kroger. How will you ensure that bikes do not get onto the existing Glenwood Gardens trails? These trails are so peaceful as walking only trails. There's an existing connector between the service road at Glenwood Gardens and the inner paved loop that could allow, or is there a connector between the service road and at Glenwood Gardens and the inner paved loop that could provide bike access?
That's a great question. I think what we'll have to look at, obviously, signage first and foremost, and then I think we'll have to see how people respond if the bike users are not respectful of that separation. We'll have to look at more some kind of a barrier potentially. But that, again, that's kind of a design detail that we have not addressed. partially because, we're still sort of pinning the trail down on the ground. So we need to kind of identify exactly where those potential crossovers may occur, and then look at some specific strategies on the ground of how we might be able to limit those, the various traffic types. But very, very good question. But we do want to keep them separated.
Barbara Garcia, I am opening the phone lines for you to be able to ask your question or share your comment. Barbara, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. My question is, our property is on Cascade, and the Winton Woods Trail will run directly behind our house. What I'd like to know is, what are you going to do to contain the trail users to the trail so they don't wander onto my property? Right now, there's the access road that the Metropolitan Sewer District uses. And you can find people out there on the weekends walking along that access road. In fact, last Saturday night, there was a group of kids out there at 9:30 at night. I'm concerned that this trail is going to leave my property vulnerable to people walking the trail.
And Barbara, I'm sorry, you said you live on Cascade?
Yes.
Okay. We do recognize that the trail is, right along the back sides of your properties there. We do need to take a close look at that to examine if there might be potentially some way to look at first maybe some kind of a vegetative screening buffer to separate the trail from your properties. And I think that's what we would consider first, and then maybe go from there. I'll get out there and take a closer look at that as we get farther into this design work, and keep your comments and concerns in mind as I'm closely looking at that area. But it's important that you let us know that. It's always, we can't be everywhere at all times, so it's good to know that there is this existing traffic, even though we don't have a trail there. There are people out there using it. So thanks for bringing it to our attention. We'll look at that closer.
Yeah, they're using the trail, but I don't think it's for the intended they're using the access road, but I don't believe it's for the intended purpose.
Yeah.
A robust plantings would be welcome. We don't want our view obstructed. That was one of the reasons why we purchased this house and moved to this area, was to have the Winton Woods in our backyard. So robust plantings and shrubbery would be welcome rather than some kind of fencing.
Okay, good. That's sort of how we are approaching that. So I'm glad that we're on the same page.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have a comment from on the Q&A, just talking about the path going to the north bus stop on Springfield Pipe, mentioning that is going through the apartment complex, and has said that that's an intrusion for those residents. Damien excuse me, I'm sorry, it popped up. Damien's asking about the service road along Sheffield. Why not cross in front of the park facility to Glenview instead of looping behind? There's more direct, it's a more direct visible route, eliminating circling the facility.
That was partially due to safety concerns with having the trail running across the front of the tech center there, with with our maintenance vehicles pulling in and out. We did also notice that if we ran the trail in front of the tech center, that we would likely have to cut most of the trees down that are sort of between the buildings and the roadway. And then additionally, we thought maybe that the route circling out behind the tech center was actually a little nicer experience. It sort of continues to sort of follow the West Fork Mill Creek there, and so you get a little bit of a longer journey through the stream valley. So that's kind of how we landed on that little loop around. We also didn't want to limit any future development opportunities that may arise in relationship to the tech center, as far as future facilities that we may need. So we tried to give it some breathing room, so that we would leave our options open for the future.
Bridget Sears is on the phone line and has a question or a comment. Bridget, you should be able to talk in right now.
Hello, I'm not really sure how I got on the phone line here, but that's okay. So I have a couple questions because I'm also a Hollydale resident. And so first of all, Ben, I appreciate you saying that you want to meet with us because I would also like to be a part of that meeting. I grew up out here, so I've been here for a very long time. But one of the questions that I have, and I also saw a question on here that was similar to mine, is first, are there any easements in Hollydale? Second, I had the same concern that the person up in Forest Park on Cascade had around the residents because I know you all bought that land at the very top of the hill in Hollydale, where the house had been, and they tore that house down because it never should have been built there in the first place. But so that's going to go behind people's properties. And I'm just wondering, how will people be able to keep people from coming onto their property as well when you're crossing through there? And then also, will there be streets that are shut down, such as Southland, which leads right to Sheffield, or straight into Hollydale, which is Toulon? So will that be shut down during this construction process? And if you're thinking that that's going to happen, will you all be giving us an approximation on how long that will occur? Because that will be, I mean, we only have 2 entrances and 2 exits to the neighborhood. And that's one of the main thoroughfares through our neighborhood. So it would be helpful, I guess, for us to know, first of all, ahead of time. And then also, will there be easements on our land out here for any of our residents?
So first of all, the trail is planned to be entirely on public property in this area. So no, there's no plans at all to utilize any private property.
Okay.
And then second, as I was mentioning before, I think we need to look very closely at we have sort of we kind of have to go in a few circles as we start designing. As I mentioned, we just recently got some detailed survey work performed, so we'll start to look at the grade and the location of the mature trees, and then as we go through that process, we'll sort of get the trail closer to a final location, and then really start to look at how that relationship is between the trail and the nearby properties, because obviously we don't want you feeling insecure or as if your privacy is invaded. So what we would prefer to leave as much existing vegetation as possible, but between the trail and those neighboring properties as a buffer, and look at, maybe planting more to reinforce that vegetative screening. I think that's sort of where we would start looking at that. But I have noted your name. If you would like to, speak further and maybe look at some things together, I'm more than happy to. Again, you can reach me by email or phone number. That information is on the website. And if that works for you.
Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my sister lives on the belt line in Atlanta, because that sounds like what you're doing is creating a belt line, just like in Atlanta. And I don't know if you all are familiar with Atlanta's belt line. So next to her property, and yes, it did increase her property. The value of her house has definitely gone up because the belt line is right next to it, and she literally is very close to it. So they have a fence that's put up where she is. And I know you're saying vegetation, which I appreciate, but I'm just wondering if even, I know that there's an additional cost if you're trying to do something like that. But I'm wondering if maybe if something more like that would work for some parts of it to protect people's properties.
I think, again, like I don't think we're at that point in the design process to make a evaluation if something like that was necessary. But again, I'm happy to look at it with you and sort of talk through that. When we get a little bit further along and we kind of have a better idea exactly where that trail is going to be.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bridget. JK was asking if the new trail is going to be a hike bike trail like Winton Woods, or just a pedestrian trail like the Glenwood Gardens trails.
This would definitely be more like the hike bike trail in Winton Woods. That's basically what we mean when we say a shared use trail.
A similar question is, will cyclists from the new trail be allowed to ride on the Winton Woods Lake Loop? And are you worried about it overcrowding the trail for pedestrians?
Currently, bicyclists are allowed to ride on the Harbor Loop in Winton Woods. All of the shared use trails, the wide asphalt trails in Winton Woods, are open to cyclists. And we would hope it wouldn't overcrowd. And I don't necessarily think that's a concern at this time. So yeah, no, I don't think we're worried.
Okay, great. Steve Warinsky has a question, and Steve, go ahead and unmute and ask your question or share your comment. Steve, are you there? Okay, while we're trying to get Steve oriented, Gabe had a question and says that the neighbors to the south of the parks are directly adjacent to the parks but lack pedestrian access. Is there any plan to add that somewhere around Lake Ridge, Lee Crest, and the Riddle intersections?
Pardon me, I had to read your question to get my bearings. Lake Ridge, Lee Crest, Riddle intersections. Those areas are not part of aren't included in this project. However, in all of our parks, as I mentioned, in our ongoing park and facility master planning, we have been looking closely at where those opportunities are to make those local community connections. That again, that's that is one of our comprehensive master plan priorities, is to increase the access. And so it's possible that we've looked a little closer at those specific areas through that process.
Okay, I'm unmuted now. Can you take my question? This is Steve.
Yes, go ahead, Steve.
All right. You mentioned, Ben, you mentioned that the trail connects communities, including Glendale. Glendale really doesn't have much access to the beginning of the trail because of Springfield Pike and Glendale Milford Road. And it's unsafe to walk along Springfield Pike. If a corridor could be designated along the edge of the golf course or somewhere to go along Springfield Pike there, that would open up access to Glendale and also to Springdale. There's a lot of folks in Springdale that could use the bike trail and the hiking trail. What are the chances of having improved access for Glendale?
That's a great question, Stephen. You're absolutely right. That's a very dangerous road. I think from our perspective, we hope that by building a trail like this, it acts as a destination and a further impetus for development of future projects. So at least within the scope of our project, we can only sort of go so far. But again, we always hope that these projects will push future projects ahead.
Push for a connection to Glendale and Springdale. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
Okay, great. Mike asked, how might local communities work with Great Parks to apply for grants and other funding sources?
I think letters of support are always important for these kinds of grant applications. There are some funding streams that Great Parks is actually not able to tap. So that's something that we could consider working, partnering together to sort of co-apply. So those are some ways. I think that conversation starts to get very specific when you look at particular grants or funding streams. So Mike, if you have any ideas, specific ideas, get in touch with me. I'm more than happy to talk about that.
Great, thank you. Ray and Beth Hills, go ahead and unmute your microphone and you can ask your question.
And I guess my question is I like the route. I love the fact that we're doing this kind of a project. I think it's really good. My concern is I think it might be a little bit too far north, the trail. And did you look at the backside where Trillium Trails used to be, is making that the main shot up the hill and then connect over behind the dam and then across. That way it wouldn't be out in the, I'm afraid the traffic corridor is going to be a little bit dangerous. And I think that would keep the trail more protected, so people wouldn't be out in, like traffic areas. And I guess I'm questioning, did you look at that as an option?
I'm not sure that specifically was looked into, and I would say partially because Trillium Trails is actually state nature preserve, and so development in that area has some particular restrictions in place on it. Additionally, if for those that don't know, Trillium Trails area would be just below the Glenwood Gardens label on this map. I think one of the issues I could imagine, maybe if I can sort of think through the eyes of our natural resources staff, is keeping the trail up north where we have it along, the existing service drive and closer to what is already developed area reduces the fragmentation to the existing natural area. And as anytime that you create a new break in these various land cover areas, can it cause introduction of invasive species and disruptions to various wildlife. So I think that's probably a big reason that we haven't looked at running it that way. And then again, the west side of Glenwood Gardens, as you get closer to where Glenwood Gardens and Winton Woods actually touch one another, the closer you get towards the actual West Fork Mill Creek, the topography there and the stream banks and are very severe. So we would have a pretty significant challenge in making that crossing over the creek. But I think I love hearing alternative ideas. It's always good to kind of make sure that you're looking at all the angles. So I appreciate that.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks. I appreciate the input.
I think we've already addressed this, but Craig is asking if there's going to be any public parking lots in the plan.
We do not intend to add any additional parking to serve the trail. We feel like the existing parking lots at Glenwood Gardens and the Winton Woods Harbor offer plenty of parking for potential trail users.
Great. We have a question from Jerry Maxey. And Jerry, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I live on Toulon. I'm the first house on the west side. The creek runs directly by my house. I have watched the young men come and go through the trail and everything. My concern is this. When you come across the creek, you're directly beside my house. And then you're coming behind my house. I've talked to the gentleman coming out to look at the park, and they say they need to go up the hill directly behind my house to avoid the wetland. But I can see out my kitchen window the marker going up the hill. I think if you have to build this, you should cross the creek and stay on the north side over to the road. I bought this house almost 30 years ago, and I like the privacy of nobody being behind me. Now I'm looking at an endless stream of people coming across this creek directly beside my house and going behind my house. To me, is security, privacy, and frankly, we don't know how this is going to work out. Like I say, I'm the first house as soon as you cross the creek. And it's an imposition, especially to go, okay, if you want to stay on the dry land, they say they have to go up the hill, which is by my house. 50 yards, 60 yards to the west, the hill starts going down from behind my house. If anything, run it down beside the wetlands, not on top of the hill, because that exposes my house and the next 5, 6 houses. That means that people are going to be coming by my house within 50 yards of my property line, or even closer. And that is not comfortable to us. If you came across the creek and took it directly west on the north side, or took on the north side of the wetlands over to the road, it would be much better. That's my comment. I'd like to meet with you because it's a serious problem as far as I'm concerned, because we're going to have hundreds of people within 25, 40 yards of my house. Constant stream. That's all I have to say now. But I would like to be invited to any meetings that you have to discuss this, because my property is the first one on Toulon to be subjected. That's all.
Thanks, Jerry. Appreciate you letting us hear your thoughts. And I hear where you're coming from, because you're of all the neighbors, that I think the trail is coming, most is sort of, it may be possibly impacting you the most, and I recognize that. And so yeah, we need to talk. So I'll get in touch with you and potentially, whether it's we need to talk one-on-one, or if we need to get together with some of the other Toulon neighbors, if there's some common concerns we can talk through. I think that's what we need to do. So I will be in touch with you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have your contact info, Jerry. So look out for a message from me.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Anne Marie is asking, once we get into construction, will Sheffield, Toulon, and Southland be shut down at all while construction is taking place?
That is a great question. I think we're definitely too far away from construction to really give you a solid answer. But I would say that I don't think we would expect to completely close any roads for construction of this project. I would think we would want to maintain traffic. But again, that's such a quite a ways out. I really can't give you a definitive answer. But I do understand your concern.
Okay. Pam is asking, how will Glendale residents cross Route 747 at Goodwill opposite the new trail access point across the road?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yes, she is asking, how will Glendale residents cross Route 747 at Goodwill opposite the new trail access point across the road?
That's a good question, and I know exactly what you're talking about, and I really think that is a dangerous area, because people are crossing to get to the bus stop. I've experienced that myself. Unfortunately, that's sort of out of our jurisdiction. We, other than being able to advocate for a safer crossing there, I don't think Great Parks can directly address that issue. But I do agree that is dangerous, and it'd be nice to see something done there.
Great, something definitely to look at. Chip has a comment and some questions. First is, I love the trail expansion. This will be a great project. Then asks, is the trail along the sedimentation basin by McKelvey planned to be up high along the rim where one could see the wetlands but might disturb the birds, or down low next to the woods?
It would be down low next to the woods. But as you move towards the west, the lower grade near the woods and the rim of the siltation basin, they get closer and closer together. And we've looked at possibly some sort of wildlife viewing opportunity at the northwest corner, where we could potentially create a, whether that's some sort of a bird blind, something similar, where you could observe the birds without disturbing them. But we do recognize we don't want to disturb that great bird habitat, especially because we have some unique migratory birds in there at certain times of the year.
Okay, thank you. Wade Johnson is offering a comment, and he says, on behalf of Tri-State Trails, we want to applaud the connections being made between the trails here and thank the Great Parks team for their thoughtful design and community outreach. So thank you for your comments, Wade.
Thanks, Wade.
Craig Kowalski had another question and is asking if the construction can be phased to allow any portion of the trails to be open before 2025. There is definitely interest in having this sooner.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that sentiment, Craig. And I would love to think that we could start building, but again, this is all contingent on funding, and as we get farther along in design, we can consider strategies like phasing strategies potentially. And I think the trick is to make those phasing strategies work with our funding sources. There are certain projects that are better suited towards one funding stream or another, and I guess the short answer is we're looking at it, but I don't want to set any unrealistic expectations that we can't meet.
Thank you, Ben. We're looking at some of the questions that are remaining. We have a number of them, but some of them have already been answered. So we're going to delete some of those questions. And so if you see a question come back, but you don't, or that has been removed and you don't feel like you got the answer, go ahead and ask that again. So just wanted to let you know we're trying to streamline some of that. One of the questions that we have is somebody is anonymous attendee is saying that I walk from the beginning of the trail at Oak Park in Wyoming all the way to Glenwood Gardens. There is a very unsafe area on North Park in Wyoming where one just has to walk in the street for approximately a quarter of the mile, and it's very narrow. Is there any talk about improving that as part of this plan?
That is not part of this plan at this time. I do know exactly what you're talking about. That would be more of a potentially a Wyoming project. But yeah, that's not part of our project.
Great. Steve had a follow-up on Gabe's question and is asking, is there any way to make the existing horse trail multi-use to accelerate getting access from the neighborhoods to the south?
That is I would say another conversation more suited towards our park and facility master planning. I know that's been talked about over the years, and it's an ongoing conversation. I guess I would say we don't at this time have any specific plans to do that. We still plan to operate those as horse trails, but it's good to continue that conversation, and then appreciate you bringing that up.
One of the questions, this is regarding rental bikes, and the question is, will Great Parks rental bikes from Winton Woods be allowed to cross over into Glenwood Gardens and back? And will there be a bike rental added to Glenwood Gardens?
That's a great question. I had not thought of that. Then that's one of the reasons we like to have these meetings is to hear things we haven't thought about. Good question. I can't really answer that, but it's a great idea. I love the idea of being able to provide users the opportunity to ride bikes between the parks. Really like it. There's also a possibility maybe that as we go along and get further along in design, maybe there's a possibility for a partnership with the red bikes. I could see that as a possibility as well. So glad you brought that to our attention. We'll kind of keep that circulating.
Yeah, good question. Michelle she says that she loves this project. Is there anything that the general public can do to support Great Parks trail planning and perhaps help catalyze the timeline? And she says, thank you, Great Parks.
Pardon me. I would say, but possibly I'm trying to think what discrete actions that a interested person could take. I think doing what you're doing here tonight, showing up for our public meeting is great. This all of this input helps us, and so that's a great contribution that you can make. I think generally just being an advocate for these types of projects across our region and within the regional trail network is helpful. And whether that's an advocate to other community members, or if that's being an advocate to your decision makers, that those kinds of those things help these projects become a reality. So I think keep doing what you're doing and appreciate it.
Dennis is asking, is there a map of the proposed trail available to the public?
Yes, there is a map available for viewing and downloading on our project website, greatparks.org/GG2WW. And you can find a map there.
Now, Ben, is the GG and WW, is that case sensitive?
It is not case sensitive.
Okay. Great. Now this one's a little long. So one of the questions is, I don't know if the question about the trail that goes in the street near North Park in Wyoming will be addressed here, since it isn't specifically about the proposed connector, but I hope that someone from the county or from the city of Wyoming is paying attention, because it's the biggest problem along the route between Wyoming and Glenwood Gardens and beyond in the future. Yay. Some cars speed through there and someone is going to get hit, as there is a lot of pedestrian traffic down there along the Mill Creek these days. Thanks for listening to the community. Another comment, follow up, I apologize or forget who mentioned it, but they're saying that the Atlanta Beltline is a great model. And John Seymour is asking, how long will the finished trail be if all the loops in Winton Woods and Glenwood are included?
If you include the our project as intended to extend the West Fork Mill Creek Greenway through Glenwood Gardens and then connecting through Winton Woods to the Winton Woods shared use trails, that network is around 9 miles. I would be hesitant to include the existing Glenwood Gardens trails because we don't intend those to be open to bicycles and other wheeled vehicles. But As far as the shared use trail network, we're shooting for around 9 miles.
Okay, great. We have another follow-up question, and that is, can you use the gravel road through Winton Woods west of the Winton Sharon intersection for, can you use them now for biking or walking?
We don't encourage that. We generally use that only for maintenance vehicles at this time.
Okay. And Chris Carr is wondering if you're working with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on how their properties can tie into this trail and be part of this new opportunity.
Chris, yeah, we have been talking with the Army Corps. It's as you may know, it's can be slow process to work with them, but we have recently gotten a higher level of interest, let's say. So I have become a little more hopeful that there's some more partnership opportunities there.
Great. Is the portion of Winton Woods west of Sharon and Winton intersection open now for biking and hiking on the old gravel road? I think this is very similar to what we've already discussed.
Yeah, I think that's referring to that same gravel service road previously mentioned. And as I said, we don't encourage that. That's generally used only for maintenance vehicles.
Okay. Thank you. And here's the question of, is there a cost estimate available at this point in the project?
I'd be hesitant to throw out a number at this point. I don't think we're far enough along to really have a good handle on the cost at this point. So I really wouldn't want to guess.
Okay. And John Seymour has a comment that he's shared, and it sounds like this will be the longest walking trail within the Great Park system, especially if Glenwood Gardens trails are included. Also, the shared use at Winton Woods, Glenwood Gardens would be longer than the one at MWW. And I'm sorry, I'm guessing with MWW.
Miami Whitewater.
Thank you. I kept thinking Mill Creek, and I'm like, that's a C. Got stuck on that one. So John, thank you for that comment. And I believe that is the rest of our questions. If anybody else has any other questions or comments. I believe that's it. So Ben, I'll turn it over to you to wrap it up.
Thank you, everyone, for attending our public meeting tonight. It's so important to hear all of these questions and comments and observations. It really helps us to do our jobs better. So I can't say how much we appreciate it. And it gives us an opportunity to, sort of step back from details and look at it from a fresh perspective. So it's invaluable to have you participate. I would say keep an eye on the project website for updates. Like I said, we will hope to have a route reveal towards the end of the year and bring back a more finalized plan. And again, just very appreciative. And I also want to thank our other panelists tonight for making this a successful meeting. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night.